Hi, I'm Nolan Peterson, President and CEO of World Copper Limited. We're a Vancouver-based junior exploration and development company in the copper sector. We have two projects in Chile called Escalonas and Cristal, as well as the Zonia project in the United States in Arizona.
Good to see you again, Nolan. I think we saw you back in November. We kind of went through a kind of validation exercise to understand how you structure the company. Now, notice you've just done a raise, just over $2 million, which kind of begs the question, what are you going to do with it? Market's tough at the moment for everyone. Share price is depressed. Market cap's not growing. So what's the plan?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think it's an industry-wide phenomenon right now. So a lot of companies are thinking about what they can do in this type of market to keep meaningful progress on their projects. So if you look at World Copper, as we mentioned, we've got two projects that really are at a stage where they're well developed. They both have resources, Escalonas and Zonia, and that provides actually more optionality. Not only do you have more than one project, so you got two, but they also are past the expensive drilling phases. We can always drill more, can always find more, which we expect to in the future, but we're not limited to only drilling to prove out the asset to make it bigger and better. That's what many of our peers are forced to do. They have one project, they're one option for continuation. So if you look at what we have, we see a lot of strength in spending the money at Zonia right now. And that gives us the flexibility to target where we think that the spend will produce most meaningful progress and return for shareholders. So Zonia in the United States, you get a lot of the tailwinds from the US messaging right now. It's a project that sits on private patented land. It's been well understood over a number of decades of drilling and development. It doesn't require any more metallurgical work, for example. So really it's desktop work, it's engineering studies, PEA update perhaps, leading into a feasibility study. All that stuff is meaningful progress that doesn't involve spending millions of dollars on drilling, for example. And then we can adapt as the market conditions change.
Right. Okay. It's a very kind of defensive position, but you feel that's the right way to go?
Yeah. You can either turtle up completely and just, hibernate, so to speak, and wait for the market to get better. Or as I mentioned, you can still try to make headway with the options that are available to you. So low spend on engineering, low spend on permitting advancement. It's defensive in a sense, keeps the cash position strong so that when the market does return, you can feel more comfortable to be more aggressive.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. I think a lot of people are actually sort of sitting back, hunkering down, and we're turtling up, trying to work when this momentum will return. I mean, copper price, it's not too bad at the moment. Copper demand, supply stories and narrative out there in the marketplace. If you listen to any of the kind of battery conferences out there, it's in high demand. So how do you put yourself out there front and center for industry to see? And how do you tell your shareholders that, look, this kind of focus on Zonia and this kind of desktop focused nature, a low cost environment for you guys, is the right way to go? Because there's a bunch of messages you kind of got to get out there. Because what your story has been missing so far is that kind of, I don't know, belief or momentum from the market that you can advance these things. And, nothing's really changed recently.
Yeah, it is a challenge, to be honest. When you talk to investors, they're oftentimes very focused on very simple metrics for projects. They want very large and they want very high grades. Of course, those are great. But what they don't always understand when we talk about our projects is the nature of them being solvent extraction, electrowinning, heap leach projects, where a comparatively lower grade compared to some of the larger copper sulfide projects can look, not as appealing. Why should I be interested in a project like this? So we have to educate people to some extent. And then generally, when you look at the market, gold is catching a lot of attention from investors. It always does, even when copper and gold are very strong at the same time. I think most people in our investor base in Canada and most part of the United States as well, very highly focused on investing in gold. So we have to kind of broaden the message there. I think that the retail audience and the family office type institutional investors, they're starting to catch up with what the really industry focused people understand on, what we need to be planning for copper in the future. As as copper starts to affect people on a daily basis, EVs and renewable energies and things like that, and the messaging around that, and they can start to see the demand and feel it, I think that message will start to hit home a lot harder. And we're seeing that in the United States. To go back to your question, when we put Zonia in front of investors, we tell U.S. investors about the importance of copper and how the U.S. government is starting to see copper, and U.S. states and investors out of the U.S., and they start to realize how important it is. This is an opportunity to make some money for them.
Right. Okay. But if we look at, you used a phrase there in terms of the way that investors see this is like in old school talk, it would have been obviously scale is everything. 200 million tons. We need grades of 1%, etc. Average grades of copper at the moment are a lot lower than that, but the scale component doesn't go away. But the new kind of conversation that people are having is around like margin, economics of these things. Where do you need to get to? Because you don't want to kind of go down this kind of economic study process and plant your flag in the sand and go, well, this is us, folks. We haven't got the scale. The grade is what it is. The commodity price is what it is. We're kind of a kind of marginal project at the moment. What can you do to put your best foot forward, display your wares better than you've got at the moment if you're just doing the desktop route? I mean, do you know what I mean? It's a real tough one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to start with, our margins are actually quite high because of the nature of the projects. They have the low CapEx, they have the low operating costs compared to other copper projects. And that's something that I think surprises a lot of people. In a matter of speaking, it's sometimes just taking one person at a time and making them a convert. But what we also want to do is plan for and tell people that, maybe we're not drilling right now, but we have a strong foundation. Here are the economics. In this type of environment, economics still matter, and they always do matter. And we also have the potential to expand, so that opportunity is always in people's minds as well. And I think that people like that. They like to know that they're investing in something solid, and then they can expand into something greater as well and make it larger. And of course, every drill hole can lead to higher grades, which we also expect to find. So we try to balance it that way. But until the market is more supportive, we can't really go out and spend $5-10 million on a big drill program. It just wouldn't be prudent.
Okay. I understand that. That makes total sense. But treat me as one of those people, please, because the low strip ratio 1 to 1, brilliant. Yep. Okay. The fact that you've started the economic study, I guess, is indicative of the potential, but delivering the scale would be important. To me, it's a copper oxide, so obviously, hopefully lower capex story here as well. But what else is there about Zonia that I need to understand and become one of those converts?
Yeah. So, and I also want to say that these are actually both quite large projects. Escalonas, our Chilean project, is actually the largest copper oxide project in development in Chile, and probably one of, if not the largest in the world as well. Based on production. So it's not a small project by any means, but compared to the massive copper sulfide projects that are out there, that's a different thing. So if we want to focus in on Zonia, though, key advantages that all contribute to its viability to make a project go forward. It sits on private patented land, right? That's one thing that, sometimes you say that to investors who have a lot of experience investing in Arizona and in big projects where, it sits on state land or federal land and the project hasn't been able to advance at all. And their ears perk up because they understand the significance of that. Other investors, it just goes right over their head, right? We tell them how important it is. So that is a key advantage. We have power access, water access, and road access to the site. It's a brownfield site, so it's already been disturbed. All of these things tick off risk boxes that aren't readily apparent when you look at the grade of a project or the size of a project. And at the end of the day, it is about how quickly you can build these types of projects, how quickly they can be in production when the expected copper price is $5-6 a pound, as many analysts are projecting. And that's, as we start to educate, if you as a typical investor, they start to realize and put two and two together, and they start to be intrigued by it.
Okay, interesting times. Like, and I hear what you're saying. Can we
Yep.
just talk about Chile? Obviously,
Yeah.
it's kind of been through the news cycle, shall we say, off the back of some announcements around. I think the word used was nationalization of lithium. I think that's been actually proven to be a kind of misconstrued interpretation of
Yes.
what was actually said in country, but it did certainly get a few nerves rattling, 2-3 weeks ago. But Chile, big copper producer, but
Yep.
some of the biggest companies in the world producing copper there. For you, two projects, Cristal and Escalonas, obviously clearly not front and center right now in a kind of tight fiscal environment like this. Obviously, Escalonas with a PEA study is good news. Is there any part of you that thinks, do you know what, it might make sense to flip one of these out, get a bit of non-dilutory capital into the company, or is there more value to be had by holding on to these for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I think if fundamentally at the end of the day, as any CEO will say, we always have to think about what's in the best interests of shareholders at a given moment in time. Escalones certainly has very, very high long-term potential, but it is a big project that's going to take many years to develop. We're prepared to see it through. It ties in nicely with Zonia, where you can bring Zonia into production, use it as a stepping stone to Escalones. But by the same token, it would absolutely be a lot easier to develop Zonia if there were somebody who was very interested in Escalones and was willing to give, some of that value to us today. So we're always open for business. It's always a consideration. I wouldn't say that, what's going on in Chile or the talk, I shouldn't even say what's going on in Chile, just the talk of what's happening in Chile is, scaring us away, or is like, we got to get rid of this right now. Absolutely not. It's just, it's a great jurisdiction to do business in. We're happy to be there. The fears, as you mentioned, are overblown. Poor headlines, clickbait journalism, so to speak. We get through it. We have our team on the ground there that's well understands the market and what cuts through the noise, as it were. So yeah, we're happy to hold on to Escalones, but we're also always interested in exploring opportunities that can be beneficial for shareholders.
Right. Okay. It's a question I think was kind of sent in a lot. A lot of people are going to send that question in terms of how do you, as a small junior exploration company, developer, early stage developer, if you want, company, kind of navigate these choppy waters. So your message to your current shareholders is steady as we go.
Yeah, pretty much. When it comes to Chile, we've slowed down development there. Again, refocusing our spend on Zonia in the U.S. right now, until I said we're happy with Chile, but until the market is happy investing in Chile again, until some of the bigger players start to show confidence in new projects and new acquisitions in Chile, then I think that it behooves us to focus on Zonia and just keep going in at Escalones with a low rate of spend. And that's what we've done. So as steady as she goes, yes, but at a slower rate.
Right. Okay. And with regards to, I think conversation back in November, we talked about the kind of corporate structure that you've got and the share register and so forth. And you kind of explained that it had been a sort of slow trickle of selling down by parties. Is that side of things back under control? Do you have a sense of who's on the register and their intentions with you? Because look, the thematic copper, amazing, right? So copper companies should be doing well, but there's a massive disconnect between equities and commodity prices at the moment. So it's a little strange one, and that's been across the board. But for you, you have this kind of extra kind of element to deal with. So share register, is it where you want it to be? Have you got new people on the register?
Yeah, we're adding new people quite regularly, but I think it goes back to what you said earlier and what we were talking about when it comes to companies, is that everybody today who's sitting on cash or has the ability to invest in not only our company, but many others, are really considering, when is the right time to start to deploy. So we have people who, love the story, love the projects. They have no issues in deploying. They're just waiting for the right moment. And while that happens, we do have some people who are still continuing to sell at a trickle. They're selling at a loss because we only did one financing, which is the most recent one at these prices. So anyone who's got shares probably bought them at a higher price. They're selling at a loss, and some people need money for margin calls. They need money, and it's because the environment is tight. And I don't think that it has anything to do with the performance of the company or what we've got going on. And it's not just happening to us, as you know, it's happening to many other companies. So at some point, I think that the balance will shift to buying, and then we'll start to trickle back up or go up much faster, I hope. But I think that that's a phenomenon that we just have to work through, continue to broaden the base, prepare the message for when things do improve and when we can start to push forward very aggressively.
Okay, so 20 million market cap today.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a kind of fair reflection of your value, I'm sure you'd say, and I agree with you, it's not a fair reflection. But in terms of feedback that you've got from whether it be through this fundraising process that you've been through or just your shareholders, where do you think they allocate the value? Is it the US because it's a sort of known entity, it's a good place to do business, critical mineral lists, etc., abound? Are they put off by this kind of South America factor?
Yeah, it is absolutely we're very heavily valued for Zonia right now. We do have a lot of investors though who are in it for Escalonas, and they're saying, again, what we talked about earlier, that maybe Zonia is too small for them. So you try to give, and then there's some people who don't like that we have two projects, and then there's some people that like that we have two projects. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But I think that the real value right now, or at least where a dollar spent will derive the most return, and not only that, but a word spent on marketing is in Zonia right now for all the reasons that you mentioned. I can spend a lot of words talking about Escalonas and a lot of money, but it's almost like we're fighting against the news media. We're fighting against perception, and that's not very productive if we have another avenue to explore.
Nolan, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.